I'm an ASECT certified sex therapist. I'm also a supervisor and a sexuality educator. So I wear a couple of different hats. I teach at a few universities and primarily to incoming, upcoming sexuality professionals, and I love it. In my private practice and in our group practice, I help support folks who are navigating polyamory, non monogamy, genital pelvic pain and penetration concerns such as erectile disappointment, vaginismus, dyspareunia, high tone pelvic floor. And then I also work with folks who are kinky or engage in BDSM dynamics and lifestyles, LGBTQIA2S plus folks, and folks navigating desire discrepancy, erotic mismatch. I probably left some things out, but that's primarily what I work with. Those are the areas I work with, and I love, love, love my job.
You mentioned that you work with people who are interested in kink, BDSM, and a whole host of different sexual preferences. I'm sure some of the things that you said, some people are like, wait, what's that? And I'm curious, how common are some of these sexuality preferences that we don't talk about often, but maybe underlying in individuals? Do most of us have them, but we just haven't explored them? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I love this question. I don't have statistics. I think Justin Lee Miller probably has more statistics on this than I do. What I do know is the more um, comprehensive sexuality education and the more we destigmatize sex and sexuality, the more freedom people feel and have to step into sexual agency. Um, I I know that once people start to really learn about the parts of themselves um, that are either really deep down or deep inside, they can feel a lot more free to step into that sexual agency. So when it comes to kink and BDSM, kink being more of that umbrella term, and BDSM being more of those actions or power exchanges, BDD, DSSM, and whatnot. And I could talk about that for ages. Um, they're more what is commonly considered alternative, and I imagine that a lot more folks are engaging in these activities and desires and appetites than we think they are. We think we are. So I think it's about, again, that like recognition of I want to try this, I feel safe in a relationship or solo doing this or exploring this, and having some of that, um, again, that vulnerability to try things out in ways that are safe and consensual.
Would you say that a large part of your work is giving people permission to do that?
I think when people come work with a sex therapist, they are accessing that courage to start to navigate a very delicate and precious part of who they are. The fact that sex therapy even exists is in and of itself permission. So I think 100% of the folks who come work with me because it's on my website that I work with folks as a sex, intimacy, and relationship therapist. So it's pretty understood that those are topics that we're going to navigate. It's up to both myself and the client or clients, whoever I'm in space with, to co-create a relationship that's built on trust, where they can show up with intimacy and vulnerability. So absolutely, it's to navigate these parts of who we are takes a lot of courage, and I'm so thrilled that sex therapist is becoming a much more common and known profession. We need folks who know our stuff, have passion for this work, and I think it's going to help destigmatize what currently is stigma.
that is part of our goal with these interviews. You know, the members of Live Jasmine, a lot of them have shared with me a version of what you just said, which is I came to the platform because I was interested in a certain fantasy or whatever the case is that I didn't feel comfortable sharing with a partner, or I've always had bad experiences trying it out with people. And so I wanted to explore it deeper. And I was able to act that out with a model, or realize I actually don't like that. But just given the opportunity to go there and explore it is what helped them learn about themselves, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And when it comes to the intimate relationships people have with partners, etc., I think it does take trust to lean into vulnerability, and vulnerability to lean into trust. And we don't get intimacy without that vulnerability. So sometimes broaching those harder conversations, or more delicate or precious conversations, I like to call them sometimes, does take a little bit of that foundational work. And trust is how I define it is consistency over time, right? So this person's going to show up in a way that I predict them to based on what I know about them. And so if that trust it doesn't already exist, it's going to be really hard to talk about fantasies and intimate desires. And that's where people feel hurt and inevitably can create harm.
What happens if someone doesn't find the space in their life to explore these vulnerabilities or these fantasies?
Human beings are hardwired for intimacy and connection. We crave it. We need touch. We need connection in order to survive. And also, it's just this primal need to belong. So if we don't get that, and we saw that happen in 2020 and so on, right? Is it really hurt a lot of folks who didn't have access to relationship, and were in deep isolation. I saw that in my practice and in supervisees' practices, and it's painful. And so what happens is, absolutely, if we don't have connection with other human beings, it can really be hard on the nervous system. It can be hard on quality of life, our mental health, our physical health, our all of it, the biopsychosocial, spiritual, sexual. The other part I heard you name was not having access. And as an educator, I think it's important, as a sexuality educator, I think it's very important to offer folks the resources that are both local and national about where to find community, and where to find additional resources that could help support the interests of the human being. So I think they're out there, people are out there. We just have to do a little bit of digging and research, and allowing, again, sexuality education to become a lot more comprehensive and available to people.
Do you feel like society as a whole is truly becoming more sex positive and more accepting? Or do you think we're regressing, or we're just staying the same?
It's such a challenging question. It is so challenging, because part of me sees, in both the local and national level, folks who are paving the way to have these conversations, and um, just having interviews like this, making this available, is paving the way for, again, destigmatizing sex and sexuality, desire, intimacy. And then the other part looks at what's happening to folks who are marginalized, and it's really scary. People are dying. It's killing human beings. And so there feels like this binary of a lot of us who are committed to and passionate about destigmatizing sex and sexuality in this erotophobic world. And then what feels like the polarity of people who are like really held on to what they deem as moral or immoral. And it's a really interesting time to be alive, honestly, and an interesting time to be aware of that binary.
Is there anything that you wish the world knew about intimacy, sexuality, that you just don't think the message is quite hitting society yet, that you wish that we just got this one thing or these two things?
That's such a beautiful question. There are so many ways I want to answer that question. What's showing up for me is recognizing what's happening in the body, recognizing when your nervous system is activated. And I love using the term nervous system check when doing a nervous system check with a partner, can give a lot of insight into how activated a person is and their capacity to continue to engage in whatever dialogue or conversation they're having. Um, the knowledge about what it is that turns us on, what it is that turns us off is, I think, really essential information to have. And it's lifelong. So, what might be interesting and delicious and we have an appetite for when we're a certain age may and likely will shift and change at later times in our lives, and to recognize that sexuality gets to be fluid. Our sexualities are ours, they're within our hula hoop. And that agency is basically what we do with what's inside our hula hoop. So recognizing again what's happening in the body and the information that our bodies are giving us on a 24/7 basis, and also that desires and appetites get to shift and change, um, is really part of what it means to be like, I think, a embodied, sexually empowered human being. It's a gift when we can find intimacy with other human beings. Then we found the potential for trust and a person with whom we can be vulnerable. It's just a very cool thing to be alive and to feel alive. And part of that for most folks, I won't say every person, but for many human beings, part of that is the connection we have to our sexuality.